Okay, you're right. This is it. Where are we, Beverly?
We're under the statues
Michelangelo.
of Michelangelo
And the
and
white-
Raphael
the
at
white-
the entrance
it-
of the Vatican Museum. And the person that works for the museum right there said to stay here until 2 o'clock. We're early.
Okay. That's a big wall that they have around the Vatican.
House. Okay. So since the Vatican was awaiting for a lot of people, obviously they needed to separate the entrance from the exit, because you were waiting for me by the big portal with the two big statues on top. That was the entrance and the exit of the Vatican museums until 2000. And then in 2000 they opened the entrance that we used to get in, and the old entrance exit was turned into a simple exit of the museums. But we are not using it because our tour will finish in St. Peter's Basilica. Okay. So now we are climbing the top of the Vatican Hill, because Vatican is the name of the state, but is also the name of a hill. And the Vatican City-State, as I was saying, is the smallest independent country in the world. But the independence of the Vatican is pretty recent, because it dates back to 1929.
Right.
Now we're going outdoor just a moment to enjoy the view, and then we are finding a quiet place inside, because I need to show you something about the Sistine Chapel. Because in the Sistine Chapel there are two important rules. You know, the first one, which is
No photography.
no pictures. But the second one is no talking. Now, there is a lot of noise in the Sistine Chapel all the time. And if you want, you can talk to each other, but I cannot talk to you, okay? They don't want tour guides to talk in the Sistine Chapel because, exactly, too much talking. And that's why they don't want tour guides to talk inside. So I need to show you something and to tell you something about the paintings before we get there.
January,
So,
Gennaio.
this is one of the best views of the dome of St. Peter's Basilica, because of these trees that frame the dome in a very beautiful way, and because when we are getting to St. Peter's Basilica later, you'll notice that the dome will be invisible, because the front side of the church is too big. We will be too close to the church to see it. The front side of St. Peter's Basilica.
So get your pictures
all the way
now.
to the left. Yeah. Take a picture of the dome now. If you want me to take a picture of you, just ask me. Yeah. Because the sun is back to us. Very bright. Many gardens. Half of the country is covered by gardens, actually, and they are accessible, but you need to actually take a tour. Otherwise, you're not allowed to wander around. And that's the Vatican radio station, that antenna over there, because actually the Vatican is totally independent. So they have their own flag, their own government.
Capella.
This is another courtyard. It's not the same. It's another one. This is the Pinecone courtyard. The name Pinecone courtyard is due to the presence of that large bronze pinecone that dates to the 1st century AD. So it's an ancient Roman statue. And it survived, strangely because usually bronze statues were melted down during the Middle Ages, and they were melted down because people needed metal to make weapons. This one survived because it was buried, so no one knew probably that it was there, or it was just too hard to take it out. And so it survived, and when it was rediscovered, it was placed in front of the old St. Peter's Basilica, in the middle of the courtyard, right in front of the basilica that the Emperor Constantine built in the 4th century AD, and that was later demolished in the 1500s to make room for the current basilica. And so this pine cone was used as a fountain for some time, so that pilgrims were able to refresh themselves on their way to the church. And then when at the beginning of the 1500s the old basilica was demolished, the pine cone was moved here. So this huge niche, this huge apse was designed just to frame the pine cone. Sphere within sphere, and you'll see in a moment why. And it's a contemporary artwork. It was made by an Italian artist, Arnaldo Pomodoro, and it was a gift that this artist made for John Paul II, and it's just the first of a long series of similar sculptures that this artist made and placed all around the world. It's called Sphere Within Sphere because through the crack of the big one, you can see a smaller one. And these two spheres represent the protection granted by Christianity, the small sphere, to humanity, the small one. But at the same time, it's also a reference to the double nature of each human being. Each human being is made of a body, the outer sphere, and a soul, the inner sphere. Now, I'm doing something for you.
Penny College, there is some other one. Con una the beaches in Chicago, this is the same artist. The bean is made of brown stone.
Wow. So it's not just one museum, but many, many more. This is called Chiaramonti Gallery.
It's okay to take a picture?
Sure. You can take pictures wherever you want.
Just not in
Not in the station. Chiaramonti was the last name of a pope who in the 1800s decided to arrange this collection like this. And his name was Pius VII, and we can see his name in every single painting because these paintings were commissioned by this pope. So this gallery is a celebration of sculpture as an art. Obviously what we see here are statues and busts and portraits. Most of them dating to the 4th century AD. And we have a celebration of painting and a celebration of architecture as well. Not because of the gallery itself, but because of the shelves. Because if you look at the shelves, you can see that the upper ones are normal shelves. They are fancy, they are nice, but they are normal shelves. The lower ones are actually pieces, fragments of architraves of ancient buildings. So they were just recycled, repurposed, and used as shelves.
So I see that each one of them have numbers on them. There's something corresponding and
yeah, because the Vatican museums, the Vatican curators obviously have records.
Right.
They have actually, yeah, they they were usually, the eyes were usually painted, but sometimes these eyes were made of different materials, like glass, ivory, or another precious marble, just to analysis beautiful on the inside, but also because from these windows, the popes were able to enjoy a very nice view of Italy, not of the Vatican.
Longing for the outside world.
Yeah. You know what? But the next room has a larger window with probably a better view, because here you have the plants and the coat of arms here. So why would they put that here?
It's so gorgeous.
Artist whose name was Lysippus. This Greek artist lived in the 4th century BC and made more than 1,000 bronze statues. None of them survived, but luckily we have a few copies of some of his sculptures, and this is one of them. It's called Apoxyomenos, and it shows an athlete cleaning his skin using a tool called strigil. And this tool was actually used by the athletes to clean their skin from the oil and the dust. And this sculpture is from the 1st century AD, so it's basically 2,000 years old.
Wow.
It's called octagonal courtyard because of its shape, but also the statues courtyard. And this is basically the heart of the Vatican museums. This is where everything began. Because at the origins of the Vatican museums, you had to imagine a private collection owned by a pope, Pope Julius II, who is actually the same pope who wanted Michelangelo to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Before his election, Julius II had started collecting ancient sculptures. And when he was elected, he moved his collection here in the Vatican, and he displayed it here. So this place was a little different because it was not an enclosed courtyard like it is today, but it was an orange tree garden, so it was very different. It was open onto the outside, but then it was walled up, and it was used by Julius II to display his private collection. The Vatican museums as we know them date back to the end of the 1700s, so 2 centuries after Julius II. And we owe the Vatican museums to the efforts of 2 popes, Pius VI and Clement XIV. And so this part of the museums that we are walking across right now is actually the Pius Clementine Museum that was inaugurated at the end of the 1700s. Obviously, the public that was allowed to enjoy the beauty of this collection
I do, but I beg you.
I probably you remember it. Thank you. Sorry. So.
Oh my goodness.
So these are ancient actually restored in order to resemble specific. The best one and he is surrounded by the 9 statues of the Muses. We see Apollo in the middle of the ceiling as well. This ceiling was painted in the 1700s. Apollo is in the middle, and all the way around we see scenes related to the Muses. But the most important sculpture in this room is the broken statue, right in the middle. That's why it's right in the middle. This is called part of this body that survived of a much bigger statue that was probably part of a larger composition. We see holes in this body, so probably there was something else. And probably the body was like incorporated into a background, so that's why we see that the back is basically flat. Okay? So what's the importance of this sculpture? The importance lies in the fact that this sculpture was signed by the artist who made it, which is absolutely strange because usually in Rome all the artworks that were made were left anonymous. We don't know the names of the artists, the Roman artists. But the artist who made this was from Greece. He was in Rome in the 1st century BC. He made the statue. Have you been to the Pantheon?
Yes.
So this dome is probably familiar because the Pantheon's dome is much bigger. This was made like a small imitation. Okay?
We didn't go inside.
Okay. The dome of the Pantheon looks very similar to this one, but this is much smaller. And the hole in the middle where you see a window in the Pantheon is open. There's nothing.
Right.
In this room we have large marble statues of gods and goddesses, even of emperors. But the most impressive thing is this large basin right in the middle that's made of porphyry. Porphyry is this deep red marble coming from Egypt, very expensive, so expensive that the emperors were the only ones who could basically use it. And this basin comes from the house of the emperor Nero. If you know Nero, if you remember Nero, he built for himself a huge palace, the Golden House. And this house had 300 rooms, parks, vineyards, gardens, an artificial lake, and fountains, obviously. This basin was made out of a single block of marble, a single block of porphyry. The mosaics on the floor are from the 3rd century. They were not obviously made for this room. They come from 2 different places. And they were rearranged here in the 1800s. They were cut into smaller pieces in order to be moved more easily.
Unbelievable.
Yes. This room is called the Greek Cross Room because of the shape. And these 2 large boxes on the sides are 2 sarcophagi, 2 big coffins. They are from the 4th century AD. And they are made of the same precious marble that you've seen before. These were made for 2 members of Emperor Constantine's family.
What's the name of the marble again?
Porphyry. 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 And it's a very hard stone. It's not easy to carve it. And these were made like 1600 years ago, almost 1600. And for Costanza was Constantine's daughter. They were moved here. Statues here because there is an Egyptian museum in the Vatican.
So much stuff to watch, to look at.
I know. Of the original color of the pigment. You remember the statues were colored. So sometimes, but just sometimes, we can see some of these remains. space. So this is the first of 3 galleries. It's called the Candelabra Gallery. Candelabra is 3 candles. And this is a collection of ancient statues, sarcophagi, little urns, vases, basins. They come from ancient Roman houses and gardens, so they give us an idea of This is another example of a statue with realistic eyes. It's even more probably impressive than the Athena that we saw before, because this is almost life-size. And I want to show you this. This mosaic, because it's an incredible example of a micro-mosaic. This is from the 2nd century AD, and it's absolutely amazing how detailed it is. Pope Leo XIII, who's the one who wanted this collection to be arranged here in the 1800s. We can see here 2 big keys, if you remember the keys of St. Peter. And these blue stones in the background. They are lapis stones. Lapis is very precious, very expensive. When in the Sistine Chapel, remember of lapis, because when Michelangelo painted this, he used lapis stones to paint his sky. Very different from what we've seen so far, because this is the gallery of tapestries, and the tapestries that we see in this gallery. So these are all tapestries. They were made in 2 different places in 2 different centuries, because the tapestries on the left were made in Brussels in the 1500s. The tapestries on the right were made in Rome in the 1600s. The tapestries on the left show the life of Jesus. And they were originally commissioned for the Sistine Chapel. The lower part of the walls in the Sistine Chapel is painted like a series of false drapes, because it was supposed to be covered, that part was supposed to be covered by tapestries. The tapestries had to basically decorate the walls and to insulate the chapel at the same time. The tapestries on the right were commissioned by and they show moments of man's life. So he wanted to celebrate himself through the tapestries. That's why each tapestry is decorated with this little there are some movies everywhere. And now there are some large, very large tapestries that hide a very interesting optical illusion.
Let me see.
Yeah. You
I have to stand back.
You have to stand here. And you have to focus on the stone. Do you see the big stone that is basically
Standing on? Yeah.
Exactly. Now you can clearly see that that stone is pointing at us. Okay? I mean, it's turned left. Okay? When you start walking by the tapestry, look at Jesus' eyes as you walk. And when you get to the other side, look at that stone again.
Stay at one for like 2 hours.
That's incredible. And
This is the gallery of maps. The ceiling is three-dimensional here because there are paintings but a lot of 3D decorations. And there are lights, obviously, so everything is much more magnificent. The maps pieces that of the Italian regions. So this gallery is like a tree. And on the right, East Coast. So West Coast, East Coast. Corsica is no longer part of Italy, but it was at the end of the 1500s when these maps were painted. These maps are still today 85 to 90% accurate because they were, it's amazing, exactly. They were made by two painters, but these nothing. I mean, they had very simple tools. No satellites, no Google Maps, nothing. And these maps were based on the drawings of a professional. He was very skilled, very talented, but obviously
okay, I don't know what this is.
video.
I'm not supposed to
What?
be taking pictures.
Oh, not, oh.
They use this for the Wednesday morning public audience. So on Wednesday morning, the Pope comes here in the square and he sits under that white structure, under that white roof. So he basically delivers a speech. And the admission is free, but you need to get a free ticket before the audience, like the day before or the morning before the audience. If you need to use the restroom again, now is the time before we go to the Basilica. Do you need to go, Ray?
No?
And you?
Nope,
You need to
I'm
go?
good.
Okay. Ah, shade is much better. So, the dome, as you can see, is invisible. We cannot see it because it's way too far and because the front side of the church is too big.
Mm-hmm.
The balcony in the middle of the front side, right under the pediment, below the inscription is the Blessing Loggia. The Pope comes out of that window straight after his election. The Sistine Chapel is on the right. We cannot see it from here, but on your way out, if you turn around, you will see the roof of the Sistine Chapel.
Mm-hmm.
And so after his election, the Pope gets dressed as a Pope for the first time, and then he comes out of that window to be introduced to the world for the very first time. They say Habemus Papam, we have a new Pope. And so he blesses the people in the square, the city of Rome.
How's the line there?
Great. You want to sit a little bit before
No,
we enter
no,
the church? There are
no.
no chairs.
No, that's okay.
Okay. So, St. Peter's Basilica is the largest Catholic church in the world.
Niente, Michele sta chiedendo se i veli si pagano, perché se non si pagano.
And it's huge.
Is that the Piete?
Yeah. Sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes fires
Was ik niet vandaag
Pretty big place, huh, Beverly?
Makes me want to sing.
You're singer.
No.
The central nave of St. Peter's Basilica helps us a little bit in the understanding of how big the water
Questa lei?
non sé che non mangiavo solo per gli altri. E sopra stata venuta.